Our guest today is Derrick Kinney, a Christian, husband, father, coach, author, and so much more. Derrick is a former #1 ranked financial advisor whose his business he built to top 1% of advisors with Ameriprise after 25 years. Derrick doesn't just talk the talk. He's one of the most trusted advisors and trusted coaches for advisors because he has walked the walk. Derrick shares the strategies that helped him become #1 and how generosity can lead to more business and deeper relationships. Derrick has been featured multiple times on Fox News, Fox Business, Forbes, CNBC, and Yahoo Finance. He wrote The Good Money Revolution, which you'll see behind his right shoulder here in a second, and now coaches advisors to land $3 million to $10 million clients without sounding salesy. Derrick Kinney, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Dan. It's a real honor to be on your show and to get to visit with you. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
I am as well, my man. I am as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we could go, but I know that Jesus is really important to you, and we're 72 Ministries. Jesus is really the foundation of who we are and why we're here. Who is Jesus to you?
Well, Jesus is everything. I like to say, no Derrick, no Jesus. You know, I think back, and there was actually a pivotal moment to bring that home. I was on the verge of making our biggest acquisition as a financial advisor. And this was something I couldn't do on my own. I just prayed, God, I need your help. I need you to shut this down if it's not your plan for me. And he said, I felt like the Holy Spirit said to me two things. Number one, Derrick, you're going to become a better leader and you're going to draw closer to me in this process. I'll share later what that ended up looking like. I could not have imagined, but I tell you what, Jesus education is far more valuable than any MBA a college can give you.
100%. So I appreciate you sharing that, because we firmly believe that, and we exist to equip and empower people so they can grow in their faith and their ability to lead and disciple others. And as a coach, as a father of 4, as a husband, as a leader, I know that that's your heart too, is to disciple people. So you say, no Jesus, no Derrick, and vice versa, right? How has that impacted your business? You've been an advisor, now you're a coach to advisors. How does Jesus integrate into that?
Well, I think it's a mindset. There's always the bracelets that people used to wear, the WWJD, what would Jesus do? But what it compels me then to challenge myself and say, well, what would Derrick do? Because Jesus did what he did, but I've got to make a daily choice to decide what I'm going to do. And what I find is, I'm not name it as a pastor. I'm not a missionary. I'm not going overseas to win people to Christ, but I want to have relationships in business where people say something's different about Derrick. He's not approaching me like there's a dollar sign above my head. He's approaching me like a person that's wanting to help that person reach their full potential. And that's really the impetus of how I run my business. So ultimately, my job is, once I sign on a client, my job is to help you and help extract every ounce of God-given potential that you have inside of you. And if I don't help do that, I truly feel like I have failed you, just because Colossians 3:23, work as though you're working unto the Lord. It's that simple.
I love it. I love it. And, I coach people similarly, that my tagline is to help them maximize their time and their talent, because there's so many financial advisors out there that are helping them maximize their treasure. And we get so focused on that treasure in this world that we lose sight of how can we disciple at our home? How can we disciple at our work? How can we disciple everywhere we go? You and I were just talking before we started recording that 90% of people are going to come to know the Lord through a friend or a coworker, not through a pastor or a family member. And the impact that we can have, as you're talking to so many financial advisors that are talking end of life, they're talking estate planning, they're discussing these situations that sometimes are pretty uncomfortable for people. They can get into the emotions and the feels. I tell people all the time in life insurance, and when I'm talking to other business owners that are working with a financial product like that you want to get to the emotional side. You want to get into the feels. If you can start talking goals, you can start talking dreams, you can start casting that vision and build that up and get there, and then talk about what is that like if that doesn't happen. What is that like if halfway through you don't make it? What does that look like, right? And we can have the same conversation. If you have this picture for your family, you have this vision for who they're going to be, how they're going to go, what happens if you pass away midway between? Are you building the habits today that are going to build that trajectory to get to that point? So let's get to financial advisors. You know your stuff when it comes to financial advisors. What does that coaching business look like? Brag on yourself for a second and tell us what separates you from others.
Well, let me tell you a quick story, because as you were talking about insurance, a couple named Ted and Mary popped into my head, Dan. And if you've ever had this happen, then let me know. I'm in a visit with these clients, and Ted motions me to stand up. We're in our office together talking about their future, an older couple. He asked me to put my hand on his chest. You ever had a client ask you, Dan, to put your hand on their chest?
I have hugged clients. I've prayed with clients. Clients have cried in our meetings before because of the prayers and the interactions, but I've never had anyone tell me to touch their chest.
So the reason he asked me to do that was he wanted me to feel his pacemaker.
Hmm.
And he said, Derrick, I need you to feel this pacemaker because I want you to make a commitment. If at any time this pacemaker fails, will you do everything you can to take care of Mary? And of course, I said yes. And we then spent the rest of our visit together talking about if something happened to either of them, what would they both want to happen? And it wasn't 6 months later. I got a call from her on a Saturday morning. I could tell in her voice what had happened without her saying a word. Ted's pacemaker failed. And what I realized was it didn't matter what my situation was, my political affiliation, what I believed. All that mattered to them was Derrick cared about them as a couple, and it helped her move on without Ted and not have a financial tragedy. And we then went on to help her become an usher for the Texas Rangers, to help her find meaning and purpose in her lives. And she began to work part-time just to support the food bank that Ted loved doing at his church. She didn't need the money, but she wanted to give back and find purpose and meaning. So I say all of that because it's really the same philosophy when I work with clients now, which are no longer clients, but they're advisors who serve their clients. And what I find is a lot of people feel frustrated. They feel like they're banging their head against the same revenue ceiling. They know they're better than what their current revenue numbers say, but they feel stuck. And so my job is simply to give them the simple steps that lead to big results. And it was the very frustrations I had as an advisor when I would seek out coaches. I learned I don't want somebody to change my life or change my whole business plan. Just give me the simple steps that lead me to my next big goal. And that's what I hope to do with each client. And so far, we've been very, very successful. And we have quite a few advisors that we serve.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. I have had stories similar to that where, you're talking to somebody and 2 weeks later they pass away, or they're in the hospital and you're working on converting a policy because it's going to expire in a couple of weeks. And we're willing to do that because the company that we are, and I'm proud to represent the companies that we do. And I've been there in the kitchen after the 42-year-old, 43-year-old passes away, praying with the widow and the three kids, 8th, 6th, 3rd grade, and been in those situations. And there's deep impact and there's deep pain, right? I'm not going to name them out of privacy, but I still consider them friends. I pray for their families, and just the impact that we can have as advisors, as people that are there for really on their worst day. We're there for them to help make sure that the things that they could control before we die, right? We can't bring it with us and we can't control everything, but if we can set up our will properly and our estate plan and our investments and our life insurance or disability insurance, tragedy is going to strike. Jesus tells us that in this world we will have trouble, but take heart, for that he's overcome the world. And we don't know what on this very night our life may be taken from us, or maybe required of us. We don't know when that is. We got to keep our oil lamps full of oil, right? We got to be ready and prepared. At the same time, we do look forward to living towards tomorrow, and Scripture talks about that as well. Before we get into the simple steps that you're talking about here, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain one last time on, as you're talking to these advisors, Derrick, are they Christian? Are they non-Christian? Does it really matter? Do you bring your faith up openly? How does that look in your business when you're coaching?
Well, a lot of my advisors, I would say, are not believers.
Okay.
And we've had advisors over the years that have become believers just by working with myself and our team. But I don't position myself specifically as a Christian coach. My job is to provide equal opportunity, great advice to all hungry advisors who want to grow. And one of the things I find is sometimes people tend to pick up on your approach. Like my approach is not, it's my way or the highway. You hired me, so listen to every word I say. My job is sort of like Michelangelo was described as he was crafting the David statue. And this is kind of legend, but it sticks in my head. And that is, he pictured this big block of stone, and someone said, well, how did you craft David out of that? And he said, well, David was there the whole time. I just needed to set him free. And that's what I believe God has done for us. God has given us this so much potential. I mean, our subconscious mind, the reticular activator, our brain. I like to say, I like to put my brain on the payroll to force myself to solve problems because I don't want to underutilize the gifts God has given me. I mean, we think AI is great, but really GI, God information, God intelligence is far superior than that, but we don't use it. And so I think it's important for my job as a coach and as a former top advisor, people are coming to me because I've gone to the top of the mountain, I've looked around, I enjoyed the scene, and I came back and I tell people about it. That's what they want. And they want to avoid the mistakes I made, saves the money I spent causing those mistakes to learn. But I just want to extract every ounce of potential every advisor has, because I firmly believe this, Dan. I believe the financial advisor is the most important relationship that people have in their lives, more so than their accountant, their CPA,
Their
oftentimes
insurance salesman, right?
Literally, that person is who walks through every one of life's key decisions, the marriages, the deaths, the graduations, the businesses, the failures, the successes, the relationships, the breakups. The advisor is there all the time. And that's why I'm such a big advocate. I jokingly say to myself, and it's what helped me become a top advisor, no fee, no me. No fee, no me. I want to make sure that I'm charging people an appropriate fee for the value I'm providing them. Because if I charge too low, off to someone else they may go. They're not going to take me seriously. And so I just want to add value. And I want to make sure that a year from now, I ask every advisor this: if we were having coffee together 12 months from now, what needs to happen for you to say, I'm sure glad I worked with Derrick and his team? And then I simply shut up and listen and let them tell me, what does the successful future for us working together look like? And let's help make that happen.
Thanks for sharing. What are those simple steps?
It's interesting. I was on a stage at the Financial Planning Association in Vegas just a couple days ago. And I was at a couple broker-dealer events before that. And when I stepped on stage, I told the advisors, I'm here to take you down a different path than you likely expect. I'm not here to give you theory. I'm not here to give you things that might work. I'm only going to tell you things that are proven to work for other top advisors right now and are achieving high net worth clients. We had a LinkedIn post I posted about a week or so ago. And it was a crazy story, Dan, about an advisor who said to me, Derrick, by reading one of your LinkedIn posts, I picked up my very best client, a $7 million account. Well, that was too much for me to pass up. I called him and he let me know he was his next door neighbor. He simply followed the scripting that I talked about. But the whole point of it was this: if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. If you want to make it rain, connect with pain. And so the first step of this entire, what I call high net worth conversation framework, is if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. And let me ask you this, Dan, if you were in a social event and you had your favorite beverage in your hand, you're mingling around the room, and a man walked up to you and said, hey, Dan, what do you do for a living? And you reply, I'm a financial advisor. He says, oh, okay. And you ask, well, what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm a personal trainer. He says, I design workout and eating plans so people can get into shape. You say, oh, okay, great. And you might ask a few other questions, and you continue to mingle around the room. Well, later on in the evening, a woman approaches you and she asks, Dan, what do you do for a living? And you reply, I'm a financial advisor. And you ask her, well, what do you do? And she says, you know how so many business owners and founders, they always put others' needs above their own. And so their own health takes a back seat. We custom tailor workout and eating plans so they can feel good. Most importantly, so they can look really good. And one day they can be the cool grandparent that has the energy to chase their grandkids across the floor. We specialize in personal training for busy business owners and professionals. Pause. 1 week goes by and you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I think I need a personal trainer. Which personal trainer do you call? The man or the woman?
Well, I've got my favorite beverage in my hand here, being H2O.
I love it.
And yes, I drink half a gallon at a time. I drink a lot of water. I would hire the second person, the woman, of course. I mean, who doesn't want to be? Everybody looks at that gentleman or that woman that's got the gray in the hair that can still get on the ground, that can still chase their grandkids. And if they know nothing else about them, they go, that's a pretty cool guy or gal, right? They're pretty hip. They're pretty with it. They want to be that person. So if that woman specializes in making that happen, that's who I want to become, connecting with the feelings, right?
Yes, connecting. And I like to say connecting with an instantly relatable problem. So one of the biggest mistakes most advisors make is when they're asked, what do you do for a living? They say, I'm a financial advisor, I'm a wealth funder, I'm a dream creator, whatever catchy title you come up with. And it forces the person you're talking to burn their brain cells to figure out what the heck you're talking about, because they've got a mental checklist of what they think a financial advisor, insurance person does. And so instead, I've created what I call it's the modern day elevator pitch, and that is your you know how statement. And so I tell people, instead of saying I'm a financial advisor, you started off with, you know how, and it's assuming then the person will know what you're talking about. So many people worry about running out of money in retirement as you slightly nod your head and you say, we help fix that. Or whatever the concern is your ideal client has. And so the goal is you're connecting with people instantly. And Dan, let me give you a quick example of this. Let me say this phrase to you, and I want to see how you respond to it. So I'm going to say this. Dan, you know how when you take your car to the mechanic, it sometimes feels like you're getting taken advantage of or overcharged?
I would nod my head, and I'm nodding my head, but I have a great mechanic that we've been using for 20 years. So I go to him and I just say, here's my card. Tell me what we need to do. I had this conversation with him last week, in fact.
I love it. I love it.
But yes, you're right. Most people, there's that doubt. There's that fear.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I teach advisors is so many want to go in with, I'm a CFP, I went to this school, I've got these features and benefits on my products and services. And what we find is most people in their humanness care about one thing, and it's their favorite radio station, WII-FM. What's in it for me? We know statistically people spend often more on painkillers than on vitamins. And so when you can connect with pain, you make it rain. So what I tell people is you want to tell someone something they already know to be true. Because when you tell them something new, they don't always know what to do. We tend to overcomplicate. Like, for example, one of our coaching clients recently was asking, Derrick, I really want to work with high-earning tech professionals. And so what we landed on was when he was talking to other tech professionals he wanted to work with, he might say something like, you know how so many hardworking tech professionals, they make good money, but they wonder where it all goes? We help fix that. And they all say, yeah. Or even to be more personal, and we wanted to get even to touch on a real concern. You know how so many hardworking tech professionals, they give their all to the office, but they feel like their family is falling apart? We help fix that. You see, that's an even deeper level, like, yes. And the goal is the person automatically says, yes, that's exactly what I'm concerned about. Tell me more. So that is step one of the overall process.
I love it. And thank you for sharing that. I started my insurance business. I bought into a franchise 10 years ago with a company, Federated Insurance, who were really awesome at what we do. We work with the trades on like the business insurance, the work comp, the autos, life, disability, estate planning, those types of things. when I started, we do annual planning, and I know you're very familiar with that, where a manager sits down with you and says, what are your goals for the next 12 months and the goals for the next 5 years and your goals for your career? One of those was to become more. And he said, well, tell me what that means. And I said, I want to be a trusted advisor. I want to be a friend. I want to be a coach. I want to be a pastor. I want to be somebody they can confide in when you're sitting down with these business owners and they don't feel like in these small towns they can really talk to anybody, because sometimes it's their competitor. Sometimes there's nobody that can relate to either the amount of money they make, the amount of hours they work, the difficulty that they face, the strain in their marriage or with their children, and all these other things that they experience. That I don't want to discredit anybody that doesn't own a business. It's just a different pull to say, I'm going to take out $1 million loan or a $15 million loan, or I'm going to put up my house as collateral and I'm going to put everything on the line, and I'm working 17 hours on a Saturday and I don't have a choice, because if I don't, the bank's going to take everything I own. That's a different feeling than, well, I guess I'm going to go to work on Monday, punch in, punch out, and if the work's not done, I don't really care, right? And I'm not saying that everybody that's an employee feels that way. However, that reminds me of connecting with the pain, right? That the pain points of when you're working with these business owners, to understand who they are, what they face on a regular basis, and then be there to become more for them. Because as an advisor, what you're talking about really is becoming more.
Yeah.
You become the person that they tell their deepest, darkest secrets to, their greatest fears, and then you don't tell anyone. You keep that. It's confidential. I know so many secrets, having been an elder on our church board for 6 years, or our church elder team, and that's part of ministry. And so ministry and advising go together very well, because we're often asking very similar questions. And that's the pain point that you're connecting with. That's the first step. What's the second step?
So I was on stage speaking to a group of advisors, and when I stepped off, there was a line of people that wanted to visit with me, and one woman stood out. She said, Derrick, I am so mad at you right now. I said, well, I just gave a great talk. Why are you mad? She said, if you had told me what you just said about 10 years ago, I could have quadrupled the size of my business. Here's why she was mad. She realized that in that initial visit with the prospect, she was solving their problems. And they would leave happy, thanking her, then they would ghost her, never to come back again, and she couldn't figure out why. And Dan, by the way, I want to point out one thing. You might have noticed I called them visits and not meetings. A meeting you often have with your proctologist. It feels cold and impersonal, but a visit is with people you care about. It's warm and inviting. And when you want to move up market, work with higher net worth clients, words equal wealth. The right word spoken at the right time, said to the right person about the right painful problem, leads to great profits. And so the word visit's non-threatening, it's inviting. And so schedule visits with people, not meetings. But what I taught her was, you want to stir the problem, not solve the problem. Stir the problem, not solve the problem. And I said, here's what that practically looks like. For advisors listening and watching this right now, the reality is you could probably plan 90% of your case talking to a prospect in front of them, because you've probably seen most everything. And what happens is we're so knowledgeable and want to help, solutions to the problems the prospect presents naturally jump out of our mouth because we want to help the person. What we find is there's one goal that you have with a prospect. And if you like to play board games or play pickleball, people will appreciate this. You want to know the rules of the game. And the rules of the game with a prospect are, how fast can you build rapport and relationship? That is the number one rule. And the way to do that is you want to agitate the problem, not solve it. And the moment you want to offer a solution, you simply want to say this: is that something you'd like my help with? Is that something you'd like my help with? And then you want to let them see you doing the listening hustle. You want to let them see you typing on your keyboard, what's my concern with solving their retirement problems? Or let them see you writing on a notepad. Even if you've got AI listening in, people feel validated and important and heard and seen when they see you taking notes about them. Very, very important. The other thing I would tell you, and I call these the $1 million questions, Dan, one of the best ways to build rapport and relationship is by asking someone a personal question. And I recommend every advisor, insurance professional, any business owner, for example, ask at least 2 personal questions in the initial visit. And here are my 2 favorites. Of course, you can custom tailor which ones work best for you. But one is, what would you say is the biggest financial mistake you've ever made? And number 2, of all the financial decisions you've ever made, what is one you are most proud of? Now, by itself, I think we'd say those are pretty good personal questions. The problem, though, is that most advisors, and I did this early on as well, I'm guilty, I would swim in the shallow end of the pool of question asking for financial advisors. And so I tell advisors, join me now. We're going to go walk down to the deep end. We're going to climb up the high dive. Let's walk out onto the diving board. Let's dive in deep. And the way that you make a personal question impactful and stand out, you need to give it what I like to call pre-meaning. Pre-meaning. So you want to designate that incoming personal questions are coming your way to open the door of vulnerability with the prospect. And here's what you say to open that door. Dan, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? And by the way, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What would you say is the biggest financial mistake you've ever made? Pause. Now you see the difference there? You see, by asking the question, it can sound like every other question. But by giving the question pre-meaning, you're telling the prospect, I need you to be vulnerable. Join me in the deep end of the pool. Now, occasionally I get some pushback on that. An advisor may say, Derrick, what if the prospect is uncomfortable giving me an answer to a personal question? And here's simply what you want to say. I completely understand. Here's why I ask you a personal question. You're more than a dollar sign to us. You're a relationship. Of all the people that we meet with, the people we choose to take on as clients, this is a relationship we're going to have the rest of your life. And we want to make sure we understand the deepest parts of you so we can help you create the life that you really want. Does that make sense? Is it okay if I ask you a personal question now? 99% they say yes.
I love it. And it's clear as you're talking, which is why you coach advisors, that you're very intentional with your words. You understand psychology. You care deeply for people. Jesus is shining through you in your eyes, in your body language, in the way that you're helping people. Because ultimately, one of the things that I talk to business owners about, especially those that undervalue their services, and this goes for advisors or insurance or whatever widget it is that you are working with, is when I'm working with them to help them see that they're actually solving a problem for somebody. So they're worth their time. They're worth the questions. And if you can ask the good question, if you can connect with the heart, right, before you connect with the logic side, depending on what it is, we want to connect with the logic. We need to solve that problem, but we have to talk about the problem first. Right? 99% of business owners face XYZ problem. 90% of businesses go out of business for this reason, right? The second greatest threat to your business is. And after we talk about those things and we get into that, then it hooks them, right? And so as you're talking about, you're preempting that, and then you're asking their permission. So you're giving them an out. They have the opportunity to say no. And then if they do say no, then you're addressing that and saying, hey, I totally understand. Look, I felt the same way. You could even say, I felt the same way when somebody first asked me that. But when they explain that the reason they were asking is because X, Y, Z, right? Or we view our clients as family, not just a dollar sign. However you want to phrase that, there's so many different ways that we could go through, but it's clear that you're also very prepared, that you've asked these questions many times. And so you have a very intentional structure to the way that you're running your meeting. And when we do that, when we sit down with somebody, it gives them a lot of comfort, right? Right? It gives them a lot of comfort. And then you talk about stirring. I had a meeting with somebody yesterday where I walked through their plan, with their life insurance policy with us. And they don't have any permanent life insurance. It's just term. And they're a business owner. They have a lot of debt. It's their second marriage. They've got a blended family, multiple kids, all these things going on. And I walked through their plan with them. I asked several questions to see what it was that they wanted to do. I'm getting to this point, right, and understanding the feelings. And then I asked, do you want life insurance for the day that you die? And then you shut up. Yes, no, why not? But I'm not going to tell them this is what you need to do. I'm going to ask them, what do you want? What do you want to have happen on the day you die? Do you
Yeah.
want to have to sell the business to create liquidity so that you can pay for your this, that, the other thing? Do you want to sell the business to create liquidity because you got 3 kids that automatically want their inheritance and you don't have cash to give them and they don't want to come into the business? What do you want that to look like? And you paint that picture for them and then you shut up. But building the trust, because, and I've worked with them on their business insurance and other areas for a number of years, so we know each other. That trust is already there. What you're talking about with their advisors is many times this first visit is their first time meeting that person. And it may come through a referral, which opens the door and warms it up. But we're talking money. We're talking about the day I die. We're talking about all these things. I've never met you before. That's a lot harder. So the value that you bring to folks that you're coaching is monumentally important. And I'm so impressed by your professionalism and the way that you do that. And how would somebody get in contact with you if they wanted to hire you for your services?
Well, the two things. First of all, the free way is to follow me on LinkedIn. It's been proven to help many an advisor attract their next high net worth client at no cost to them. So I call this kind of the ascension model. That's the lobby of the hotel is my LinkedIn. And then the second part would be to go to our website, which is Success for Advisors. There's a download that we have called 10 Conversation Mistakes Advisors Make and how it costs them money. They can download that, and I list out some of these key points. But what I would tell you is if you had to just summarize everything and not even have to pay me anything, realize this. If you want a business that's booming, focus on the human. Tech gives you space.
Love your alliteration in your rhymes, brother. I love it.
Thank you. I mean, tech gives you space for more face-to-face. And Dan, this is interesting. I was at an event of all the top tech people in wealth tech earlier this year, and I'm interviewing 22 of the smartest men and women on the planet who are developing products and services for advisors and professionals to save them time, help them be more productive. And all of them tell me the same thing. We're going to help advisors get back about 5 to 10 hours a week. So I'm excited about this, but I get home and I get this sinking feeling in my stomach like, wait a minute, I think advisors may mess this whole thing up because they're going to get this time, but they're not going to know what to do with the time to grow their business. And often they're going to think, well, I'll just use AI. AI will bring me my clients. Think about AI as the roadies on the tour if you're Coldplay or U2 going on concert. AI is supporting you behind the scenes. You still got to go out there and sing the songs to attract the fans that want to work with you. And I mean, Jesus was the ultimate consultative selling professional. He was face-to-face. He knew that face-to-face won the race and voice-to-voice was the best choice. I mean, that's the great model that we have. And so what I would tell advisors is whether you're introverted or extroverted, your words are the currency that you have to attract the people you want. If you want to stand out, that how statement that connects with an instantly relatable pain point is your ticket. Especially you think about the holidays, you think about starting the new year strong. You want to own a problem. And when you own a problem, you own your success. I would just encourage people, you think about your favorite band when they come to your city to play, whether it's a Christian band, secular band, whatever it is. Do you think that before they step on stage, they all huddle around at the coffee shop and say, we got to write 10 new songs, we're in another new city? No, they simply sing the same great songs over and over again. It's though it's the first time they've ever sung those songs before. So the audience feels like it's a fresh message they can connect with. If you want to be successful, just think about actors, actresses, athletes. They often do the same great thing over and over again. It's typically advisors who want to throw the wrench in the engine while it's running hot at 55 miles an hour just to screw things up and refix it again. Just do what you're good at over and over. And if you own a problem, get known in your community for owning a painful financial problem, you will have people who are attracted to you because you become the specialist who owns that problem.
100%. And As you're sharing, I just think I'm so grateful. My father's been in the life insurance industry for over 40 years, and he was a specialist at what he did. And my mother, pathologist, so a specialized doctor. So I saw two specialists go to work who owned businesses, who worked many, many hours, but solved problems. I saw what it took to go into that. I also understood that I want to become a specialist. I don't want to be a generalist. And you see the same thing in sports. You're either really good at dribbling, for example, or really good at shooting, or really good at getting steals and rebounds and setting screens, or really good at, driving to the hole, or you're really good at getting rebounds and dunking. There's positions in life. And when you niche down like that, when you become very, very specific, you're a financial advisor for doctors, for example, you're a financial advisor to busy business owners who, wherever way you want to take that. Again, I help people solve problems who are in the trades, right? So I help make sure that they have peace of mind on their worst day. But what does that mean? Okay, well, they know that I work in the trades. They know that peace of mind is something everybody wants. My worst day, what is my worst day? Well, I work with hundreds of business owners to solve those problems. Well, what are those problems? Well, let's continue down that vein to get to those problems, right? Similarly, on the coaching aspect, I work with a lot of very busy business owners who don't spend a lot of time with their family. I'm working with a gentleman right now that's gone 2 to 3 to 4 weeks out of the month. He wants to be with his family. So we talk about the problems that he could face and that many face in getting divorced and not having a relationship with their kids, not having their kids respect them, not being able to see their grandkids, taking that down the road. My favorite scripture is, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? You see some trophies behind me and different things like that. That's simply for credibility's sake when I'm talking to these business owners. But I have accomplished things in my life. The Lord has given me that ability. When I came to know him when I was 18, I read the same Bible that I've got right here, and that verse jumped off the page to me because I thought, oh, I could climb this mountain. I could build this really good business. Like, you could build a really great financial practice or coaching business or whatever it is. But if you don't have a relationship with your kids, what's it worth? If you don't have a relationship with your wife, what's it worth? If you don't have a relationship with the Savior of the universe, and you don't end up going to heaven, you end up going to hell, what's it worth? And so one of the things I love about advising, one of the things I love about talking about life insurance or coaching, whatever it is we can get into those feelings, and we can get into that place where now we can tweak it and pivot and make it a spiritual conversation, and strategically do so by dropping nuggets and throughout these different visits that you're having with people. Of one that I use all the time, and then I'm going to ask you how you do this in your practice. So there's a purpose for this. That I've got a video on our channel specifically answering the question, how are you? Right? It's a question we get asked all the time, and people just say fine, good, whatever. They don't have an intentional answer. The more intentional like you are with your questions, with your words, with the conversation that we're having. You mentioned Michelangelo, you got what looks to be almost a Picasso behind you, right? There's intention behind these things. And so if somebody asks, how are you? I can say, I'm awesome. I just had a really good conversation with one of the top advisors in the financial space that work for Ameriprise, who loves Jesus and really, really cares for people. Well, I fit in Jesus in that, right? I also fit in I fit in a bunch of things very intentionally, that one of them might draw them into the conversation deeper. Well, tell me more about this guy, or I want to hear more about that conversation, or he knows Jesus, whatever it is. Or youth group on Wednesday night was incredible. We had almost 60 kids, age sixth grade through 12th grade, and the message of the night was, you were made to lead.
Wow.
I wish somebody would have told me that when I was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Nobody did. Nobody told me I could be a leader, right? What business owner, what individual doesn't want to talk more about you were made to lead and the future of our country and pouring into kids? They're going to bite on one of that. And if they don't, well, then at least they know that you were at youth group, at church, pouring into kids, telling them they were made to lead. There's a lot of points of entry, and that's where I'm going. So points of entry on your side, as you're coaching these advisors, or as you advise people, do you look for these different points to fit Jesus in? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't lead in with Jesus in my coaching. The goal is, whether you are a believer, unbeliever, you typically have a burning concern right now of, I am not where I want to be in my business life. I feel like I am chained to my desk and I'm missing my kids' soccer games. I want to spend more time with my wife or my husband at home, and I don't know what to do. And ultimately, my job then is to help pull out of them what is it they want. Because so many times when people feel like they're not living up to the potential, they know they're better than where they should be, they begin to live in that sort of victim mentality, and they begin to hold themselves back. There was an incident where I was in the office on a Saturday morning and happened to be catching up on some things when I was an advisor. And I felt like the Holy Spirit just directed me, you need to press play and listen to that message. There was a frantic woman's voice that said, Derrick, I know it's Saturday, but please call me back. I got a letter in the mail and they're about to send me to jail. I need your help. Well, I've never had that happen before, and I knew that would not age well until Monday. So I quickly called her back, and she said, Derrick, I got this letter. They're going to send me to jail. And I said, what does the letter say? And she said, well, it says I didn't move money from my savings to checking, and I wrote a check, and the money wasn't there to cover it, and now they're going to take me to jail. And I said, why do you think they're going to take you to jail, first of all? And she tells me a story about when she was young. She was 7 years old. She overheard a conversation her dad had. A store owner called her dad and said, it looks like you bounced a check. We believe you did this on purpose. We're going to send the cops to your house and haul you off to jail. So this woman, who was now about 65 years old, grew up believing that if you make a financial mistake, you bounce a check, then you're going to get hauled off to jail. And this was very, very eye-opening, because for years she'd been a client of mine. On the outside, the picture of success, but on the inside, she was this wilting flower. And I said, let's come in the office next week. And by the way, they're not going to haul you off to jail. No need to get fitted for the orange jumpsuit. You're safe. We're going to call the bank together. We'll get the money moved. I'm going to help you with that. And when she came in, what we realized was she was carrying bad money beliefs. She had not taken my advice for years that would have made her a lot of money. She always complained about getting passed over for a raise and the promotion she deserved. As we began to unpack all these beliefs, we began to realize that's not how God made you. Did God make you with self-limiting beliefs? And she was like, no. Well, no, he didn't. Let me confirm that. And so the fact that she could disassociate herself with the beliefs she was carrying and she saw them, she began to laugh. Then she began to cry because it had held her back so long. Literally within 3 months, she got a $25,000 a year raise and got promoted to vice president, a position she deserved years earlier. But she didn't get it because she didn't believe she deserved it. She was holding herself back by what she saw other people said was her potential. And I say that because when I talk with these top 1% advisors, or those that want to be in the top 1%, on the outside, they all look like the picture of success. But on the inside, many of them are wilting like that flower. They know they're better than what their revenue numbers say. A part of their life is missing. Their relationship with God is not where they want it to be. Their kids overlook them. They feel like they're missing out on life. But on the outside, they look successful. And so we want to make sure that how people view them on the outside is how they begin to see themselves on the inside. And we work from the inside out. And often when we can help them begin to build a better business, it coincidentally and simultaneously helps them build a better life, one that honors God. They're now making more money. And as my book says, how to make more money to do more good with it.
Right. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. And that comes back to those shackles, kind of what I was talking about with the business owners earlier. Going back to, you're in a small town. Nobody understands, especially if they're Christian and you go to church, nobody understands what it's like to run a business. And then you go out into public, a lot of times people don't understand your faith that you're doing business with. So you kind of feel like you're on an island. Nobody understands what it's like to have that sinking debt, or to have that pressure, to have 30 to 50 to 100 people relying on you for a paycheck, that you're making the wise decisions, the right decisions, that not like this woman, you're probably not going to go to jail if you make a bad choice, but 10 people might lose their jobs. 10 families might be in financial instability and fear if you don't make the right choices. And that's a lot of pressure. and all the other things that go on in their life. We're shackled by those beliefs. And one of those beliefs, and where I'm heading, is that they're alone, that they have no one to go to, that there isn't somebody that understands them. Well, there are people that understand them. You got to take the chance with that individual, and you got to take that blinder off. The most successful business owners I know see limitless potential. They see the open road, right? The optimist versus the pessimist. Yes, we recognize the challenges. We see them as opportunities, right? When I'm coaching men, or I'm in our men's group and I'm helping lead men, I don't say our greatest failures. I don't say, we're really bad at this. I say our greatest opportunity for growth, guys.
Yeah,
this is really exciting. I don't say, hey, we're doing a terrible job discipling and we're really bad. No, our greatest opportunity right here, this field that's ripe for the harvest, it's so exciting. Look at how many guys in their 60s and 70s and 80s we have here. Well, guess what? There's 30 to 40 guys out there in their 30s and 40s that are dying to have a relationship with you. What a great and beautiful opportunity. And then there's those 30 and 40-year-olds. What a beautiful opportunity we have to connect with these 20-year-olds and teenagers, right? This discipleship that God created. Paul built, he made tents, right? And tax collector, Matthew, Peter, James, and John, fishers, they were connecting with people every day through regular things in the marketplace. And that comes all the way back to 90% of people are going to come to know Jesus, not through a pastor or a spiritual, somebody that's like a missionary devoted to the cloth, a member of the cloth, right? But through a coworker or a friend. And so when we meet somebody with a widget, whether that's financial advising or insurance or coaching or whatever that might be, maybe we're working in a factory, we can really understand the needs of the people that are sitting across from us or working next to us. And when we help them, as you're saying, solve that most pressing need, I like to ask, what's your most pressing need? What's the thing that's heaviest on your heart right now? When you thought about hiring a coach or having this introductory call today, what was the number one thing that made you want to reach out? And then let's talk at that. Not that we're picking at a scab. I've heard a lot of people talk about picking at a scab. I don't like that. I don't like the terms prospect, right? It's not a prospect. I'm not digging for gold. We're here to solve a need. We're here to help people. We're here to serve people. We're here to love people. Let's look at it that way, which it's the same thing, I guess. You're either going to be a financial advisor if you pick at the scab, or you can be a financial advisor that serves and loves and leads and cares and has that vision for somebody, right? But in through that, you have the ability to share Jesus. And I love that you are connecting with people, and that that's your heart, and then that's leading you. Derrick, I appreciate you being on here today. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, from your book to your website to your faith, anything that we didn't cover?
No, I would just leave our advisors and our professionals with, if it is to be, it is up to me. There's often this analogy of, well, I'm going to sit in this parked car, and until God intentionally starts to move this car, then I'll know it's time to take action. And I've always had the opposite approach. I have always been a believer that God is a God of action. God is the most entrepreneurial person that has ever lived. And I believe I am going to pray for wisdom, and I'm going to start driving that car. Then I pray, God, if this is not the direction you want me to go, then you cause this car to stop. You lead me a different direction. But I am always going to default to action and not procrastination. We know that satisfaction is a direct result of action. And I believe that God wants us to take action. So if you're in doubt, start taking action. Worst case, you'll figure out a way to learn more about yourself. You'll draw closer to God, and you'll become a better leader, which is what God has allowed me to learn on many, many occasions. It wasn't what I wanted to learn, but it was the best education anybody could ever teach me.
Derrick, so much wisdom in everything that you shared with us today. I'm humbled that you even reached out. You mentioned LinkedIn. That's how we connected. It's amazing. If somebody's not on there, I don't know why. I see a lot of people make fun of it on Instagram and Facebook and these other places, but there are so many tried and true professionals that you can see their exact resume. You can read everything about them. It's credible. It's verified. You can see their connections. You can see their recommendations. You can see their actual face. It's their actual name. I'm so grateful that we're connected. If somebody's not following you on LinkedIn, I highly recommend it, especially those financial advisors, so that they can get that free advice that you're giving away this wisdom every single day, not just on podcasts, not just in your book. You're giving it away everywhere, every day that is in a free form for them. And I highly recommend that if you're not following Derrick on LinkedIn, that you check him out. I'm sure all your links to your websites are there.
Yes.
Okay. So Derrick, I love you, brother. I'm so grateful to meet you. Thank you for being on here today. Have a wonderful weekend and God bless you.
Love you too, my friend. Thanks for having me on, Dan. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely.